Welcome back to the Humble Market Timer YouTube channel. Once again, if you enjoy the content, please like, comment, and subscribe. In today's video, I want to look at Netflix. Is it going to continue lower, or should we be expecting a bounce? Before I go any further, please check the description for my disclaimer. Once again, these are my sole ideas, not investment advice. Now, I'm not going to do a deep dive into the company Netflix. I think we all know what and who Netflix is. They are the preeminent streaming company pretty much in the world. They don't have a monopoly, but they have a large portion of the streaming business, and they seem to be getting stronger and stronger. But just kind of looking at briefly the chart here of Netflix, this is a weekly chart. You can see it went on a big slide here back in 2022. But since then, it has made, particularly in the last 3 years, it has pretty much is more than 10x in price. It's been on quite a run. It's been one of the strongest technology stocks that we've had in the market. It seems to be on fire. The brand keeps getting stronger and stronger. It almost looked like it could do no wrong. But we finally hit a point here in around June. This is a split adjusted chart. So the split adjusted price was about $133, $134. And at that point, we sort of peaked, and we have been pulling back ever since that peak in June. Now, they've done a couple of things since that oftentimes will give a stock wings to possibly move higher. They did a forward split to try to make their shares a little more amenable for people who don't have as much money. So they did a big stock split. Oftentimes you get big run-ups into those stock splits, but that really didn't occur in Netflix. It sort of moved up just a little bit, but then continued to move down. And then back in December, they released this news where they had planned to acquire Warner Brothers, and it was an estimated value of about $83 billion, which is a massive amount of money. And as you can kind of tell by the price action since that news was announced, the price has continued to fall. Now, there are some pros and cons with Netflix adding or trying to acquire Warner Brothers. The deal isn't completed yet, but they do have some sort of an agreement. So, of course, the positive for Netflix is Netflix always wants to add to its catalog. The more offerings they can have on their platform, the more valuable it is, and the more subscribers they can retain and acquire. So that's sort of the benefit. One of the negatives, or some of the negatives, would be is that this is a pretty complicated acquisition. It's something that may take, I've heard, 12 to 18 months to complete. So some people aren't on board with that. Also, as I stated earlier, Netflix's business has been on fire. They were doing just fine. Some people think adding something as big as Warner Brothers, which wasn't exactly the best model for generating profits, adding that to the mix, people thought that maybe that wasn't a good idea. So I believe that has been a lot of the reason why there's been continued downward pressure on Netflix. So it's sort of been a hit and miss type of acquisition, but it's been more miss. And there seems to, at least by the investing public, to be more negatives than there are positives. So that has drawn on the price. But you also have to factor in this massive 10 to 13x move it has made in the last 3 years. You can expect a pullback. So looking at all that, I want to break down the chart as best we can, and we're going to draw some parallels to see what type of story is being told in the chart to see if you can kind of get a feel for how Netflix is trading. So I'm looking at this chart again. This is a weekly chart, and this is about a 10-year window, and you can kind of see the action over these 10 years. And I'm looking at, again, I kind of let my eyes tell me where I want to draw my parallels. And one of the mistakes I see a lot of people make when they're trying to find the parallel for the price action in the stock, a lot of times they focus specifically on peaks. And oftentimes that works. But when I see a stock like this, it makes me look at aspects that's not necessarily a peak. So one thing that I'm seeing here, again, kind of letting my eyes take me certain places, I'm kind of seeing this action here, and it's kind of traded sort of in this action here. I might tweak this a little bit, but this is sort of what I'm seeing as a bit of a parallel for Netflix. Let me get to stop the parallel about right about, just a little bit up a little bit to about there. Let me adjust this down a smidge, and right about there. This is, in my opinion, the parallel that Netflix has been trading in this 10-year window. And the reason why I think this is a good parallel, while I adjust this just a little bit more, is I often look for certain areas of resistance and support. And if you notice, you can see how we broke here, hit the top of the resistance, or hit the top of the support, I'm sorry, and we bounced higher, hit the top of the support again, bounced higher, then we broke and fell down. And then we went back to the resistance up here, or that top portion of the parallel, couldn't break it, and then we went lower. So notice the action inside the parallel, hit the top of the parallel here. Then we had a big decline here. And as you can see here, we've been working our way back up to the top of the parallel here. Got rejected, went back to the midpoint line, went back to the top of the line here, went past the top of the parallel, down to the parallel, acted as support, bounce, and then we broke back into the parallel. We're back at the midpoint area. So you can see the midpoints, how we hit here, and we're currently at that midpoint area here. I think this is a really good parallel that's really showing us what action Netflix has had. If you notice, we have been trading in the upper portion of this parallel for much of that 10 years. Then in this portion here from April of 2020, really January of 2022 till about October 2024, we were in the lower portion of that parallel, and then we broke back above it. So again, I think this is a good parallel, and you can see the uniformity and the nice nature in which Netflix has traded. And you can really only get these looks when you look at charts from a broadened long-term range. So just kind of looking at the action that we're seeing here, I think I'm able to kind of see what is going on and project what type of action we could see forward. I really do believe that we're in the process of getting potentially a bounce here at the midpoint. That has been a strong area of support. When we break it, it's going to go all the way down to the lower part of the parallel, in my opinion. Again, looking at Netflix, even though it's kind of had some negative things, it's had a pretty substantial pullback from the highs, about 30-35% now, so pretty nice pullback. Netflix revenues are still doing great. They're just now tapping an element that could be a major revenue stream for the company in that ad revenue aspect. Really about 95 to 97% of revenues are coming from subscriptions. They really have just scratched the surface of getting revenues from ads. So as that matures, you can see the growth prospects in the revenues continue to increase. So I think that will help the company. But I do believe there will be some negative pressure due to what exactly is going to occur with this acquisition, especially when you're looking at how long it's going to take to get it done. But at least in the short term, what I'm seeing here is I'm starting to see potentially head and shoulders pattern setup, which is typically sort of a bearish pattern, but I think in the short term it's bullish. What I'm anticipating is that we get some support here after this nice downward action for the last 8 months or so. I'm expecting there to potentially maybe be a bounce here, potentially all the way back up to the top of this parallel before we potentially get another rejection and we reattack this midpoint line once again. And I think this action could potentially set up, as I said, a head and shoulders action. And if we were to break this line, I think you could very easily see a move all the way back down to the lower portion of this parallel in the midpoint or the middle of 2026. Possibly stretching to 2027. Again, looking at the run that this company has made from 2022 to 2025, a breather is to be expected. By no means do I think that's the end of Netflix, but I do believe, just based on looking at the chart and looking at the action, that we are in the short term looking at a potential maybe 20-25% bounce back up to the top portion of this parallel before we get rejected, and then we have a potential head and shoulders pattern where we pull eventually all the way back down to the bottom of the parallel. So short term, I think it's bullish for Netflix. Particularly, they have an earnings report coming up. I think if things may be positive with the ad revenue, that could spearhead a bounce in Netflix. But I'm finding it might be difficult for it to sustain that bounce. And then if we have overall pressure in technologies and in the overall stock market, you could see a potential pull all the way back down to the lower portion of this parallel. So keep an eye on Netflix. Keep an eye on the trading action. Keep an eye on the short-term potential bounce. I don't think Netflix is dead. It's a great company. It's catching steam. We still have to see what's going to happen with this acquisition. It could fall through. They could pass it and it could go on, but we really won't know the benefits of it for quite a long time. Hope you like the content. If you like it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.